This is Quincy Anderson. You know I love my country. There's no other country better than mine. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana.
United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast, a platform that unites global voices in a call to action to protect our planet's rich biodiversity. Join us for critical insights and let's stand united for biodiversity.
Welcome to this week's episode of United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast. I am your host, Kiana Wilberg. Today, we place the spotlight on a very important topic. What is the vision behind the Global Biodiversity Alliance, and how do we begin to understand key aspects of Guyana's green leadership? What better person than to help us understand these two very important subjects than His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali. Mr. President, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, first off, help our audience to understand what was the vision behind coining a Global Biodiversity Alliance?
Well, first of all, Guyana, as we're all aware, is now a leader on the issue of climate and the environment. Of course, we are leading most of the global forum on forests, tropical forests, and the most natural offshoot of that is to expand our leadership to complement the entire ecosystem around our forests, and that is biodiversity. Biodiversity is the impact on climate, on biodiversity, the impact on and damage on biodiversity over the last 50 to 60 years is severely underestimated, understated, and in our view, is not given the type of global attention that is required to address something that is so important to our own existence, so important to the environment, to the ecological system, so important to agriculture, so important to the balance that is required in keeping our planet alive. Over the last 50 years, it is estimated that we have lost more than 50% of our global biodiversity. And while the world has lost more than 50% of its global biodiversity, here in Guyana, we have managed to keep our biodiversity intact. We have managed to keep the richness of our biodiversity intact. And we are of the view that the world must now pay attention to the issues surrounding biodiversity. And in paying attention to the issues surrounding biodiversity, there must be a system that recognizes biodiversity as an important element in the climate equation. And in so doing, we must find policy mechanism, we must find market mechanism to support and safeguard our biodiversity here in Guyana and around the world.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, the low carbon development strategy, it has been revered by international institutions across the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Now, how does the biodiversity chapter align with the successes that we've seen thus far from the LCDS 2030?
Well, as you know, the LCDS is a comprehensive document. It is not only a document that focuses on our forests or our climate credentials or our environmental credentials and what we offer to the world. Our forests, our LCDS is focused on a holistic pathway to achieving national prosperity. It is focused on a development strategy that is global in scope, global in scale, and global in outlook. It focuses on a strategy that positions Guyana as a leader on the issue of climate and the environment, but more importantly, it creates a development strategy and a pathway that shows the rest of the world that we can achieve prosperity whilst at the same time safeguarding our environmental asset and creating livelihood options and creating opportunities, economic opportunities to support communities, to support families, to support economic expansion without you know, harming our environment with and with developing a strategy that is sustainable and resilient. Not to say that we don't utilize the richness of our environment. That is not what this strategy is about. It is about how we do so in a sustainable way, in a resilient way. How do we enable this international asset, this global asset that we have in Guyana to also be a revenue earner for us so that we can finance the different initiatives, the livelihood options that is required to safeguarding the forest, safeguarding the ecosystem, safeguarding our biodiversity, safeguarding our flora and fauna. So our LCDS is not an environmental strategy or a climate strategy. It is a national development strategy. And that is why in the LCDS 2030, the expanded LCDS, it speaks about biodiversity. It speaks about the marine economy. It speaks about, of course, the forests. It speaks about climate resilience. It speaks about financing, adaptation, mitigation. It is a very comprehensive strategy that speaks to countries' aspirations, countries' development trajectory, and link that to environmental sustainability and policy sustainability, because it is important that we create policies that enables the sustainability of our system, policies that can create wealth because the population requires economic wealth, policies that can enhance our infrastructure, policies that can expand our outlook, create new opportunities, jobs, whilst at the same time being sustainable and resilient in nature.
Thank you, Mr. President. And based on what you provided there in such a comprehensive response, it's quite clear that the LCDS has been a blueprint for Guyana in terms of balancing, doing that balancing act between environmental protection as well as developing our resources responsibly.
I would say the LCDS has been more than a Guyana asset. The LCDS has graduated to a global asset. It's a development strategy that I think, in my humble opinion, is a blueprint. You know, when the LCDS was first conceived by then President, now Vice President Barry Jagdeo, it was aimed at you know, how do we monetize this great asset, the forest? How do we ensure that in monetizing this asset, we develop a comprehensive strategy to enable the upliftment of the communities and the people, especially in the hinterland and these forested communities, especially our indigenous people. And when the world is trying to find ways in which indigenous people can be empowered, Guyana has shown not only how we empower indigenous people and bring them at the forefront of development, but how we have really integrated indigenous lifestyle, indigenous culture, indigenous people in policy formulation, and how they benefit directly from creative policy formulation that gives direct transfer outside of the national budget, because they're also supported by the national budget, but they get direct transfer from earnings from the LCDS that goes directly into these communities. So just imagine the power of now adding biodiversity earning, keeping the biodiversity intact, because this is critical, especially as we now move towards investing in ecotourism, eco services. We have to keep that rich biodiversity asset intact for the type of economy and the type of sustainability that Guyana is pursuing. So the LCDS has really graduated into, I would say, a large scale development strategy that focuses and addresses all the issues that we confront as a global community today: energy security, food security, climate security, resilience, sustainability, adaptation, and mitigation. All of these challenges, all of these issues confronts itself with is addressed in a comprehensive way in the LCDS. And we must not forget how the LCDS was developed. The LCDS was developed through perhaps the widest consultation one can imagine. It was a national consultation involving discussions, study group, focus groups in almost every single region and community in the country. And it is managed by a multi-stakeholder committee. The multi-stakeholder committee comprised of course, chaired by the president, comprised of policymakers, comprised of sector leaders, community leaders, civil society, indigenous people, representative from the youth segment of our population, women. So the LCDS is a living document. That is why when we went to the United Nations and we announced that Guyana, here's a country, Guyana, that is providing already strong global leadership when it comes to the forests. We now want to take that leadership to another notch. We want to show, demonstrate that we are not only talking the talk, but we are ready to walk the walk. That is why we said we want to invest in this global alliance, creating this global biodiversity alliance that would look comprehensively at biodiversity as an important global asset, and how do we position this asset to meet the development aspirations of people around the world, but more importantly, to safeguard the planet. And that is what gave birth to this summit that will be held here in Guyana in July. We expect leaders from around the world, academia, policymakers, philanthropists, the development planners, scientists, research institutions, universities, all coming together around the same table with a common objective, and that is to create a framework to guide policymakers and to guide the discussions and to guide the type of initiatives that we're going to take together as a global community when it comes to protecting our biodiversity and creating that ecosystem to support our biodiversity.
Mr. President, as you clearly laid out, it's evident that Guyana has been punching above its weight class where green leadership is concerned. And now we're taking that to the next level. And so, with this summit, we know that financing is a very crucial part of the equation in the efforts that we would want our stakeholders to pursue in terms of the conservation of our flora and fauna and so forth. What are some of the objectives where financing is concerned that you hope to achieve through this summit?
Well, that's a very important question. But before we get to financing, because that is really the elephant in the room, because we had all of these pledges at various COP, and we saw nothing coming out of the pledges. So I'm just weary and tired of the pledges. But here is where Guyana has shown that we go beyond pledges. We create a product, we create a mechanism, we create a formula, and through the LCDS, the carbon credits, we have demonstrated how we can make this work. So I think the first thing, and that is why we need all of these stakeholders around the table, is to first assess what we have and then find a valuation system. Because how are we going to value this asset? What are the criteria? What are the assumptions that we're going to use? So we have to assess the asset, create a valuation mechanism around the asset, a pricing mechanism. We have to look at whether what are the contributing factors to the loss of biodiversity, and how do we create an ecosystem to support the first of all the audit, the valuation, the pricing mechanism, the market structure, and the tools of getting that market. It is not really looking at at this as pledges and financing alone. It is creating a mechanism. It is creating a market-based mechanism that is I think that can sell itself. A market-based mechanism that we as a global community adopt if we believe, as we should, that biodiversity is a key and critical issue. And if we don't address it now, if we don't find a formula, a market-based mechanism that allows us to keep this great uh, asset that allows the balance of our planet, then we're going to be heading into a serious crisis.
So clearly, Guyana is taking the front lines. We're heading to the front of the line where this fight for biodiversity and for real action is concerned.
Yeah, and not only heading, and we think the timing for this is very important. COP is in Brazil, and we believe that out of this summit, there will be a comprehensive paper, a document that will be prepared, and we want that document to find its way at COP. We've already discussed with Brazil having this attention being paid to the outcome of this summit. We intend to send a full copy of the report of the summit and the papers that will emerge out of the summit to the United Nations so that we can start the long journey of putting biodiversity on the agenda and at the top of the agenda. We led the fight to have tropical forests on the agenda. Tropical forest was never on the agenda. It is Guyana that led that fight to have tropical forests on the COP agenda, on the international agenda. So today we are taking on this international uh, uh, struggle. We're taking on this international responsibility, I would say, the international responsibility of ensuring that we work with like minded allies on this to have biodiversity as a key component in the discussions at COP and also to have it now on the global attention at the United Nations.
Mr. President, I want to thank you so much for energizing this week's podcast with your insightful perspectives. I know that our audience has learned quite a lot. So thanks again. And we know that many persons will be looking forward to this summit.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to share my thoughts with you. And I look forward to welcoming our guests to this summit. And we look forward to having outcomes at this summit that will contribute to a conscious planet and a planet in which we create the enabling environment for a sustainable livelihood and also for the survival of the planet itself. And there is so much negative news around the world today. We're trying to find peace. Guyana, again, is the president of the United Nations Security Council at this time. And there's so many complexities. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to look at something that is tremendously important for the survival of the planet that requires all stakeholders and everyone to be a part of. So thank you.
Thanks again, Mr. President. To our audience, thank you as well for joining us. Please be sure to follow us next week as we bring you more thought leadership on the fight to protect the world's biodiversity.